Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Beyond the Stamp. Uh, this is February the 19th. And before we get started, I want to clarify that Nina, Leslie, me, Heather, none of us are lawyers. Nothing that we discuss is to be construed as giving legal advice. And the Michigan Notary Association is not a law firm. Now, with that, I will turn it over to Heather. You can introduce yourself and tell us what our topic is for today.
Hello. I can't share my screen yet. I'm
Make it
Heather.
so you can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let me see what I can do about it. Hello, hello. All right. How is everyone doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good.
So, I'm Heather. I've been a notary since 2023. I'm the owner of On My Way Michigan Mobile Notary, and I'm also a wedding officiant. And I am a board member at the Michigan Notary Association and a member of the Washtenaw County Senior Leaders, which is a networking group for businesses whose target market is senior citizens and disabled people. So, as you probably know, as notaries, we primarily check three things: that the person signing is who they say they are, that they understand what they are signing, and that they are signing of their own free will. So, how is that different for elderly and disabled people? It's not necessarily, but like any demographic, there are challenges that are unique to or more likely in the senior population. What's the most common ID we see when we're notarizing? The driver's license.
Driver's
Right?
license.
Yep. Um, Michigan law requires an unexpired ID with a photo and a signature, not a photocopy, not a picture. The problem is seniors 60 plus are more likely to be part of the 1 in 8 people in the US without a driver's license. An estimated 18% of seniors nationwide do not have valid photo ID. What reasons have you heard for someone not having ID? Poverty, race, gender identity all play key roles in whether someone has ID that matches who they are now and is unexpired. According to the demographics data of the groups working on this for voter registration purposes, upwards of 40% of the people without ID access in the South are seniors who were born during Jim Crow. Yes, we're in Michigan, but up through the 70s, it was common for babies to be born at home. Hospitals nowadays help with the paperwork to get your birth certificate and social security card application filed, but that even wasn't the case like into the 80s, right around the time I was born. And not all the records that we do have are digitized to be searchable. So then there's a whole domino effect of not being born in a hospital or one that isn't in business anymore today, leading to not having current IDs as an aging adult. What's the solutions? Make friends with the staff at senior living centers, senior living, rehabilitation centers, retirement homes, things like that. When you become personal friends with the staff and they know their patients, you can start using them as credible witnesses. Obviously, that doesn't work for super short-term rehab centers, but it's a step. So if you don't have anybody in your contact network that knows your signer, you can help them find a notary in their own contact network. One of the things that I've done is I check mutuals on social media with their kids. And for the most part, I've been able to find somebody, even if I can't help them personally. One of the things that I do instead of waiting until I get there to discover that they don't have ID is I make sure I'm asking when I'm setting up the appointment if they have unexpired ID, if they have it with them, and clearly communicate that they will need it in person to sign. Otherwise, I show up and it's, oh, well, my son sent me a photocopy. No, doesn't work that way. All right, if somebody's making their own appointments, chances are they're competent to sign. There's a lot of steps involved with making an appointment with a notary and getting them to the location that you need them. So that in itself is a huge demonstration of competence. There are going to be a few exceptions, but honestly, even in the room at that point, you might not be able to tell. So I don't worry too much about that. So this is mostly about people who from the beginning have a family member or a friend who's contacted you for an appointment on someone's behalf. Checking competence does not have to mean knowing who the president is, but are they oriented to the here and now enough to understand and explain in their own words what they're signing? One of the biggest factors in these appointments is time. Due to age-related cognitive delay, it takes longer to process what's being said to them and to formulate the answer. Studies show that even in fully coherent and competent seniors with no particular mental deficit, they may take up to 5 times as long to process what's being said as somebody in like their 20s or 40s. Age and a variety of disabilities can cause cognitive delays and hearing loss. Pauses and grasping for words are going to be normal. They don't necessarily indicate a cognitive problem. Asking you to repeat yourself is totally normal. If you've got all of those things happening, take it as a yellow flag to uh carefully consider what you're doing here and double checking, but they're not necessarily reasons in and of themselves to immediately stop and say, no, you're competent, you can't sign. One of the problems that we run into is that family may want to speak for them, for their loved one, to try to help. They haven't always been informed why you're there. Pain medication can make people drowsy or disoriented. Energy and pain levels are not consistent. And of course, meeting a new person, dealing with potentially emotional paperwork and lots of activity, and the physical process of signing, especially large packets, can be fairly exhausting. So, what's the solution? Prepping before the appointment is important, both for you and the signer. Remind whoever's booking that the signer needs to speak for themselves. And my new favorite tip, ask them to have the signer read all of the documents before the appointment. It doesn't have to be immediately beforehand, just so that they do so ahead of time so that they don't feel rushed or pressured to not read it all. So that's the last thing I want, is for somebody to feel like they can't read something just because I'm there.
Like an ambush.
Yes, absolutely. It is an ambush. So when I'm making the appointment and in the appointment confirmation emails, I will include things like be sure everyone who is signing has read the documents before the notary arrives. Hold off on any pain medications that can make your loved one sleepy or disoriented. Scheduling your notary right before a dose of pain medication is due can be helpful. And of course, reminding people that the signer has to speak for themselves during the appointment. If you have the chance to ask ahead of time if they have any hearing issues and if you should speak up, do so. Otherwise, greet them in a conversational tone and kind of see what happens. Mostly just so that you're not walking in and shouting at them if they can hear you. I like to ask questions like, what are we signing today? Who are you giving your power of attorney to? Who's with us today? Be firm about the signer answering for themselves. Your confidence is going to go a long way in this situation, so practice with other notaries or family members ahead of time if you feel nervous. I'll ask people what their address is, which we have to do for our journal anyway. So that's helpful. It gives me an opportunity when I'm filling out my journal that I just say, okay, I gotta write down where your address is, where are you living right now? And it helps check to see if people are oriented and competent. This is where I feel I need to remind people that having an accent and being deaf or hard of hearing do not qualify as reasons to say that someone is incompetent. Um, Check their ID, ask their name, and ask what they're signing today, ask who's with you, where they are in the hospital or University of Michigan Ann Arbor are equally valid answers. You do this as part of your journal. Those are usually questions that get logged anyway. One of the entries in my journal is the location of the signing. Oftentimes I just put home. I don't rewrite somebody's address. Because it's not necessary to know the address, but just, hey, this is where we are. Leslie, I had to say your explanations have been a huge help to me in dealing with overly helpful family members. Can you tell us what to do if someone's jumping in to answer too much?
Like me to tell you?
Yeah.
Yes. So if somebody wants to answer, I let them answer. And then I say, you know what? I can totally appreciate you not wanting your mom to suffer through these answers. But part of my job is to make sure she's aware of what she's signing. So I need her to answer for herself. I have all the patience in the world and I have all day. So I'm not going to rush her, but I need her to be able to communicate with me. And if it gets too far and they keep doing that, I will ask them to turn around, just walk a couple steps away and turn around so they don't see that mom is frustrated. And I totally understand why they're doing it because they don't want mom to suffer. I get that. But mom doesn't want somebody to do everything for her. And so it's actually respectful to allow mom to answer for herself.
Yep. Absolutely. So I am not a doctor on the topic of dementia and Alzheimer's. Even notaries who do have a background as medical professionals, we're not working in the capacity of practicing medicine when we are there as notaries. There is little to no medical information required for this. Both dementia and Alzheimer's involve lucid periods, especially in the early stages where the person is completely oriented to the here and now. They know exactly what they're saying and doing. There are some things you can do to make those lucid periods more predictable. For starters, catching the signer the day after they've had quite a bit of rest is helpful. If you have the flexibility to have the family call you when someone wakes up completely lucid, great. If not, and if they've already had one missed signing, maybe consider passing it off to someone who is close by and super flexible for their schedule. That came up when one of my friends from high school, his dad was dealing with Alzheimer's and had a couple of weeks after preparing all of their paperwork where he just was not oriented. He was not lucid. And they had a notary in a couple of times who had understandably said, no, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not having him sign. So when they got connected with me, I was just like, hey, listen, you literally live 3 minutes away from me. So if you wake up at 6:30 in the morning and he's lucid, just call me. I'll figure it out. And that is exactly what happened. They called me at 6:30 in the morning, and by 7 a.m., I was sitting there with a cup of coffee at their kitchen table. It took us 10 minutes. We got it all done. And he was completely oriented to the here and now. By 9 a.m., he was gone again.
Just to as an aside to that, when you started out with we're not doctors, we are not attesting to their mental capacity. That is not our job. Our job is to say that at the time we were with them, they understood, they communicated to me that they understand what they're signing and that they're signing of their own free will. Our job is to make sure they understand what they're signing, not understand everything that's going on in the world or their life or their house or anything like that. So I did have an experience, and Debbie was actually with me for this experience, where the woman did not know a lot of the things that was going on. She had just had a review with the attorney. The way it worked with this attorney was they would, at say 1 o'clock, they would be online and review everything. And then at 2 o'clock, I would walk in with a witness and the paperwork. And we went in and she didn't have ID. So back to your ID thing, her ID had expired only because she wasn't driving. So it wasn't any of the other reasons that you listed. She just wasn't driving, but it expired. So her son went over to Meyer and got it renewed, came back with it. We were good. While he was gone, we had a conversation and I said, so you had your review with the attorney? And he said, no, or she said, no. And I said, okay, so that's a red flag for me. So we left. I called the attorney. The attorney said they did have their review. She just doesn't remember it. And that's fine. Okay. We don't have to remember the review. When we went back, because we did go back after he finally got the ID, and so we chatted with her again, and she didn't remember the review, but she knew everything that paperwork said. She knew who got what. She knew she had one child. She also knew she had a niece, and that niece gets everything in that one bank account. And she reiterated that to her son, make sure that's what that says. So she didn't know what was going on in the world, and she couldn't remember 1 hour earlier or even 20 minutes earlier, but she did know what she was signing, and she absolutely wanted to sign it. So I love that you're going through this. And can I just say that I really, really hope that people who are notarizing for people in the senior industry will join a senior oriented professional group so they can learn about dementia and Alzheimer's too. So they can, because everything you're saying here just resonates with all the things I've learned too. And I'm really super glad that I know that there's networking groups all over the place, and there are people who are happy to teach you. So learn about it, learn about working with the seniors, not just from this topic tonight, but learn about it with people in your community, because like you said, those credible witnesses, they can be anyone that you network with enough to know that they are who they say they are, and they will vouch for them. I've had it happen several times where I just call on my community and they help out. So
Yeah.
carry on. You're doing a great job.
Shockingly, the one thing that I use the most from my experience as a chef is how to deal with dementia and Alzheimer's patients, because I was a chef at old folks' homes a few different times.
Oh, wow.
So the order in which I do things will change when I'm working with someone who's dealing with these sort of memory issues. I have them sign everything before I do any of my part, which also allows me to flip back through and double check our work in case we miss a signature. Also, one thing I try to do in these situations is to warn the family that this process is exhausting and the person's probably done for the day. So don't be alarmed if the minute I leave, they start having a bad day, they're irritable, they're tired, they're reminiscing about, I thinking it's 20 years ago, it'll happen.
You said you let them do everything before you do your part. You mean they sign all the papers and then you take them and sign all the papers? Is that what
Yeah.
you're? Okay, thank you for that
I'm
clarification.
just sitting right there and
Yeah, you're watching the whole thing, but
right.
it's not they sign, you sign, they sign, you sign. It's they sign
Exactly.
everything, then you notarize everything, and you're
Yeah.
still there. So that meets the requirements for the law.
Right.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
still there. It's like you said, it's just not back and forth. And
Yeah,
that also lets me make sure that they continue to remain aware the whole time that they are signing.
yeah.
Because if they start to wander off when I'm still in the middle of filling out my journal or finishing my last couple signatures, that's not really the end of the world.
Yeah, but you're identifying them prior.
Right. I'm
Yeah, that
checking their ID first and checking to make
okay.
sure that they're aware of what they're signing all
Yeah.
of that before we even get to the signing part. So,
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
yeah. Some of the questions that you're asking to check competence also check consent. For example, when you're asking someone who they intend to give power of attorney to, if that matches, you also know that the document hasn't been switched out to say somebody else. I like to kind of keep an eye on things to make sure they're not being pressured to sign something that they don't want to. Because of course, switching out papers and pressured to sign something you don't want to is some of the biggest problems that we run into. We can't do anything about impending mortality, making someone feel forced to sign a will, but we can make sure that it is the will that they are expecting it to be. So swapping the paperwork is one of the main concerns, where someone has read ahead of time what they're expecting to sign, but then it's not the paperwork they've been given to sign. So this section is as much about protecting yourself as it is about protecting our clients. When you are checking competence and consent, ask them if the document they're signing looks familiar and if it's the one that they're expecting. If you are finding discrepancies in what they're telling you and what the document says, treat it like a printing error and watch the reactions. If mom's the one who's signing, but it's different than what she's expecting, if she's pissed off or scared, if one of her kids bursts into anger, if one of them is silently stewing, dig deeper or cut your losses. Listen to your gut. It's up to you whether you have the signer do their part on every document first before you notarize, or whether you tell them to take a break while you do your part. I just kind of let the situation tell me which one's going to be better in the moment. Sometimes we're not dealing with something like Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's a physical exhaustion just to sit up and sign their name. In which case I might be more likely to do one back and forth. If something isn't working, try something else. Be ready to pivot and be confident when you do. I always book longer appointments so you can be patient with slow answers and difficulty signing. One thing that I have in my bag, actually 4 things that I have in my bag, is a clipboard. In case you're not signing at a table, read the room to know, whether you're going to have them sign everything at once or go back and forth. Know your steps in case you need to do them out of order. I would normally log ID, have them sign, then I notarize, and then we move on to the next document. But if we're racing a lucid morning, or especially if we're holding off on pain meds so that they can sign, I might verify ID, have them sign everything that they're going to sign, and then sit off to the side to finish up my portion, logging ID in my journal and notarizing everything. I'm the kind of person who, if I don't do all the steps in the same order every single time, I'm going to forget something. So it is really important that if you're like me, you have a checklist for yourself and that you actually use it. After a few notarizations for older folks, I developed a pattern that works for me. So I essentially only have 2 scripts I'm working from, which has helped. Be patient, ask smaller questions, wait longer than you would normally to expect for an answer. Count to 5. If they're clearly thinking, wait another couple of seconds before jumping in with a reframed question. If they're looking at you blankly, break down what you're asking or saying into something smaller. Literally, use fewer words, use simpler words. This is not condescension, this is accommodation. So mind your tone while you're doing it. Other tips: report elder abuse. We may not be mandatory reporters, but we can report elder abuse if we suspect it. The numbers on the screen. For Michigan, at least for Adult Protective Services, anytime, day or night, you can make a report. Staff investigate allegations within 24 hours after the report is received. I've made a couple of them. I don't usually get any follow-up. But I did have one that they had to call and ask follow-up questions. Be ready to walk away. Trust your gut. If you are not able to confirm the signer's identity, competence, or willing to consent to sign, it is not just okay to walk away, it is your duty to say no. If the situation is one where with certain changes, you might be able to come back and do this another time, leave a card. Maybe they just need to grab ID from someone else's house an hour away, or maybe they need the lawyer to redraft something. Maybe they're not entirely lucid, but it's also 5 p.m. and they had physical therapy today. So if you come back in a couple of days in the morning, you could probably catch them in a better headspace. If you're struggling with a language barrier, use an interpreter. Medical facilities often have a service available, and online interpreters over audio and video can be available even on demand. I actually have an affiliate link to the service I use if anyone needs it. And use your best judgment. Any questions?
Solution, actually. So a couple of notes that I took as I was going through here. In my journal, and this has saved me, I record where we are and the address that's on their ID.
Mhm.
Both. Because if anybody contests it, it tells both stories. It says, yes, I saw the ID and we were at this place. And I wouldn't necessarily know that. And I have had people not be able to remember what their address is because they just moved and they're moved into their daughter's house or something. So sometimes I put 3 addresses down. I have a story about a guy who made an appointment with me, called me every 3 days up leading to the appointment. And when I got there, he didn't know who I was. So he was completely coherent on the phone and not at all coherent in person. And we did not do anything. I didn't charge him. That's my thing. If I can't because you can't, I'm not charging you. And that's just how I run my business. And I left and he called me and said, "Where are you?" I was literally just in his room. So then I knew that he couldn't do anything. I also had his sister's phone number and his daughter's phone number. His daughter's like, he should not be anything like this. But I want to put up on the screen, I want to share. So there are people who are stuck homebound. They cannot get out and they don't have an ID because they're homebound. They're homebound, they're not getting their ID. So this right here is how people in Michigan can get their driver's license back. They have to follow this whole thing. I know that it works. I've had several people use this. It takes about 6 weeks, but they do get their ID back. And sometimes that 6 weeks is too long and the people expire, just like their ID did. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about those situations. So I do send this to the family and they get their ID back. Also, I help the homes that they're in, the senior living facilities, whatever they are. If they're there long enough, the Secretary of State does have a bus or a van or something that they'll take around to these senior living facilities and the people can go to the bus and get their ID back. And I don't know exactly how that works, but I do know the facility can call and arrange for it. And I know it's happening because sometimes I go in, they're like, hey, Secretary of State is going to be here on this day at this time. So if they, short of this, they can go right on the bus and get their ID back the same day if it's arranged for that to happen. So I think that's
It's called the mobile unit.
Thank you. Yeah. So there we go. I think it's been up long enough that it can be put that on the thing. So I just wanted to offer that to you guys. So.
You have that on the Mina website, and I linked to it from my website. And I have had two different people who like called to book an appointment. And then when I showed up at the appointment, I found out that they had gotten that off of my website, done the whole process, and then booked their appointment with me. I had no idea that I have this client out here waiting to book an appointment with me for 8 weeks while they did the whole process. It was great.
I have sent it to so many people the same, but I did know that they were going through the process. And I actually have one right now going through the process. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I've got. I think that's all my things. So thank you. That was very good, Heather.
It
Thank
was
you.
very good. That was
And it was
amazing.
pretty to look at too.
I was on a scrapbook kick when I made that one.